And then we'll get started because it is right at 8. Are you coming on? All right, so good evening, everybody. And this is a recorded space. So it is something that we record and try to send out in case you didn't get on or you want to pass it to other people. We appreciate it because it is going to be a lot of information. It's something we really enjoy doing, is giving this kind of content and recruiting information that we learn along the way. We actually have clients because I am the number one softball recruiting company in the country. We actually log our results, show our results. Most people know us. We've been around about 9 years, and we've got some of our clients on and some of our parents are on. So they're going to hear some of the stuff we say over and over again. But I want to introduce my famous co-host, Dr. Jackie.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I am Jackie Wins. I'm from New Jersey. So yeah, it was 50 degrees today. I'm sorry, Texas. I am a former two-sport NCAA athlete for Division II. It was soccer and lacrosse. While I didn't play softball in college, I am an avid supporter of all women's sports. I am a huge softball supporter. I'm traveling all over the country this year to go watch throughout the NCAA. And highly, highly involved on the fan side and Twitter for OU as well.
Fantastic. And tonight I'm bringing on, I called it Mike and Mike on my notes, but two of my most trusted coworkers, I would call them, because we work on many, many things together. But Mike Zimmer. Mike, do you want to give a little background about yourself and what Facebook page you operate, and a little bit more about the contributions you're going to make tonight?
Yeah, so I didn't didn't want to go behind Jackie. I'm not as distinguished, but yeah, I've been in the coaching softball for about 5-6 years. Played baseball growing up, and I run a coaching softball Facebook group that has about 110,000 people. Started about 5 years ago. So kind of just getting in here, starting the process through recruiting all the way up, and yeah, so have big fan of softball.
Awesome, fantastic. And I know the other Mike is on here, so I'm just going to shout out Mike. The bottom left, if you click on the button to request to be a speaker, then either myself or Jackie, while I introduce the topic, will bring you on, and then we will turn around and make you a co-host also. So he's got a Texas Glory logo on it, Jackie, if you see him, but that is Mike Miller. He's going to be coming on. So I'll give you guys an outline of what we're going to cover. I called it camps. Oh my gosh, because there is so much about camping in the world of softball that I wanted to just come out and really just give you a brain dump. There is so many different types of camps, and the language around camping. If you just listen to the Facebook dads out there, or you read the NCAA's, how to get recruited, they're going to tell you email coaches, and then they're going to tell you to go to their camps. And I'm going to flip it on you, and I'm going to give you a lot of information for why that's good and not good, and timing, and when you should and shouldn't, and what type of camps you should go to, because there's some language that's miscued out there. And I'm going to ask my co-hosts, Jackie and Mike, just to raise their hand and come off mic at any time, because I have 2 pages of notes here. So I want to definitely ask their insight and their experience on the things that they've done along the way also. So the first one is, what type of camp is it, and when do you go? So I'm a marketer. I spent 28 years in corporate America. I use a model called who, what, where, when, why, and how. Like, why are you going to that camp? Who invited you? I mean, you could flip it to around to the who, what, why, where, and how, and what, and all that, and ask those questions. So when you're doing it, what is the right age to do it? Well, it depends on the reason why you're going to the camp. If you're going for recruiting, you need to make sure a lot of things. I have a list here of the things to be careful of. If you're going to get skills and drills, I recommend that you go much younger. Use 7th and 8th grade to really go in there and fine tune your skills and get better and get bigger, faster, stronger. And then I'm going to really tell you, spend a lot of money any money you're going to spend, I'd spend it more on your talent level and making your talent level camp ready. And that sounds funny, but when you understand the business side of camping, which is the recruiting side, you're going to want to make sure your skill is a match before you get there and put yourself in a recruiting situation, or you get what we call exposed. And it's not necessarily a positive exposure. It might be more of a negative, get them off the list exposure. So, and again, audience, if you guys have questions, feel free, to raise your hand, and we'll definitely call on you, because I'm going to throw a lot here. Then there's skill camps. And there's a lot of camps. Like, I love George Arajo. If any of you guys know him, he's the assistant at Cal State Fullerton. There's a lot of reasons why they can't recruit certain states. They can't, they don't necessarily look at anybody east of 11 states that they have an educational consortium with. So there's lots of little informational pieces behind it. But man, he's one of the best clinicians in the world if you want to learn infielding and footwork. My daughter played for him back in her California days. She played Team Mexico with him. There's people like that that are master clinicians. I also love the JUCO coaches for that. They're master clinicians. Go to these camps, get the skill, know who you're going to, why you're going, and what you expect to get out of it. Then what's come into softball in the last couple of years, more so than ever before, is what I call the combines or the measurement camps, where they're really bringing out the guns and the Rapsodos, and Mike's an expert at all this stuff, but the names of the products to bring those out and actually measure your exit speed and your spin rate and all these things that they're measuring. And I'm telling you, the bigger coaches are doing it now, because the talent level and the amount of student athletes that are out there that have the talent to compete, they're having to find a way to sort through it and figure out who's got the best of the best, and even if they're in that category. So they're using it to disengage you, not necessarily to engage you. Like, you can go to a camp and have insane metrics. And I saw this happen at one of the Big 12 schools. And two girls were pretty much, the stars at the camp. And one was hitting bombs farther. The other one was hitting consistently bombs over the fence. And I'm not joking about the home runs. These two were home run smashers. But when they adjust and they moved the pitches and had different movement, the one hitting the 230 just couldn't make it happen. The other one had played at an elite level and saw a lot of movement pitches for a long time, and she had a better outcome. And it would have been hard for anybody betting on the two which one would have been better, because the 230 looked sweet. But if you can't get that 230 out in a game, it was, not worthwhile, right? So you have to sort through the measurements and get somebody that is your clinician that understands the metrics, because I get pictures of guns and all kinds of metrics, and I'm like, what the heck does that really mean? And does it really mean anything in recruiting? So you might have great exit speed, but you don't do it in a game. Or you might have, great overhand throw. One of our best players ever is at Campbell. She maxed out on deck's measurements, 72-mile-an-hour overhand throw. She was the best one. And she's at Campbell. She's not at a Power 5. There was different reasons and different match purposes. So, it wasn't all on her number one overhand throw in the country measurement. So then there's team camps. And I recommend, Mike is saying no mic like usual. Jackie, I'm not sure if that's something quirky with Twitter or not. Mike, I'm going to send you Jackie's phone number and just see if the two of you can connect on it while I'm talking here. Always little glitches here with Twitter Live and just technology in general. So just bear with us here, but we're trying to get another one of our co-hosts on here. And I'll kind of inhale here, Mike, if you have any comments so far what I'm talking about, but I was going to switch to talking about team camps next. Mike Zimmer.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying if you had anything to add so far on the types of camps, skill camps, measurement camps. I was going to switch to talking about team camps and individual camps next.
No, like you said, yes, I do love all the measurements stuff, but they only, like you kind of said, they only tell a small portion. All right, they only give half the story. So don't live or die by the numbers.
Excellent. So then the other kind of camp that we see periodically is a team camp. When the entire team goes to a campus, I think those are great at a certain age group, obviously much younger, because one, the coach wants to see, a particular club, a particular team, because they know they have depth of talent and they don't necessarily get that one-on-one experience with each student athlete. So those team camps are great. On the flip side, though, sometimes just because your whole team went there doesn't mean that your entire team can play there. So I think as parents, you need to kind of read between the lines. As a recruiting tool, I don't believe team camps, taking an entire team to multiple college campuses is the best, most efficient way, because it's highly unlikely that every kid on that team is going to have a true opportunity to actually play for the multiple schools that you might take them through. And we have several brands down here that do that, and they've had some success with it. It's just not, I manage too many to try to convince you that that would be the best way to take your entire team and everybody pay and one kid gets committed. That just kind of rocks me a little bit. So, and then the one most people talk about are what we call school specific camps, like hosted by the actual university. And this is where I flip it on you. I think you should go out there and do what NCAA's true process is, which is email the coaches to invite them to see you play, get them to see you play before you invest in those universities. Because how are you determining what schools to go visit as a camp? Well, that's my dream school. Oh, but that's a school in my area that I've watched for years. I've always been a fan of. I think those are great when you're 7th and 8th grade. Go experience it. Go take a look at it. But man, we're getting 8th graders on the map. People argue with us all the time about this. We're not trying to do this, but these big schools will call us and ask us because our reputation is we recruit at the higher level. And they say, who do you got that's a 26 and a 27? And some of that happened. And in these kids that typically go are typically pitchers, catchers, shortstops that actually have what it takes to get the look. But then there's some downside to it too. If you get too many looks too early and maybe your talent isn't 100% there yet, and they're already using it as a way to mark you off instead of mark you on the list, that can be a risk too, right? So I'm giving you a lot to think about because each individual is an individual, and it's really, really hard to put a blank statement out of go email and then go to the camp of your choice. And then here's the big one, and we're going to talk about academics on the 13th, but trying to decide and pick your college according to your major is just not realistic at this age group. They're just too young. You got to figure out where softball is valuable to you first. Most universities have a method or a path to the educational degree at some point. So you'll hear me say that a lot. I really, really, truly believe in that. And then I always ask the parents, what did you want to do when you were 15 or 16? It's not typically what we're doing today, right? So I'm going to give you, unless Jackie and Mike have any insight here. Oh, and Mike Miller, would you like to come in and introduce yourself and tell us all about yourself? And tell us, I also want them to know the list that you create.
Sure. Yeah. And thank you, Jackie, for helping me out. We had some technical issues. So my name is Mike Miller. I'm a travel softball coach, and I also run social media for a big club in Texas, as well as some other private companies that are um, into fast pitch softball. The list that Sherry mentioned, it's kind of a regional list for Southwest, but we've got camps from all over. It's called softballcamplist.com. And every winter and every summer season, I just try to keep a list of camps that are out there. And there are a variety of the ones that Sherry just described. We've got, on-campus camps, and we've got, the multi-school camps. It's a lot of stuff that's in the Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana area. But like I said, every now and then we've got some other. Anytime a college sends me a camp, I'll go ahead and throw it up there. And it basically started just as a list that I was using, to try to help my daughter through the recruiting process herself many, many years ago. And I shared it with a bunch of people that I was coaching at the time, and everybody seemed to like it. So I just kind of kept it going. And thanks for having me tonight, Sherry.
Oh, fantastic. No, Mike's been a great friend and partner in the softball world for, 16 years now. We're family, so we're that tight in everything we do. But the reason I brought Mike on is because it kind of switched. I mean, in even my daughter's generation, you kind of went to camps that your club told you to go to because you were good enough to play there. And now there's just so many kids and there's so much depth of talent that it's hard to do recruiting that way, where I call it a soda machine, because of course my husband works for Coca-Cola, where you sit on the, in front of the machine, you put your coins in and you click the buttons for where you want to go. It really doesn't work that way. I wish it was that easy. At the end, after you go out and do the process the way we've created it, then you actually get choices and you get to make a decision grid and decide where you're going to go. But on the front side, it's really, really hard. I had a parent ask me at a practice on Sunday, well, what camps should she go to? I don't think you should go to camps until you get colleges to come see you play and you get some kind of reading about where your daughter's talent level resides before you go the spend. Otherwise, you're going to spend 1,650 camp invites going to 1,650 schools across the country, and you just don't have the time or the money. And then I just don't get this one. A lot of people put their kid on a plane, they go across the country for an entire weekend for 4 or 5 hour camp, and they get their photos, and we'll talk about that one in a second, and they come back and they just don't understand why they didn't get recruited there. Well, the coach was really nice and they remembered my name, and yes, she did great, she did good, but is it good enough, right? And it's really, really hard being a parent trying to understand their talent level. So Mike mentioned my keyword, which is multi-school camps. I am a huge fan of multi-school camps in front of a tournament. You get to know who's going to be at the tournament. You get to actually play in front of multiple layers of colleges in front of a tournament. So they have a chance to actually see you play. And in the summer, these really happen. They don't happen as often in fall just because of the short time frame and the short amount of time that coaches can actually come see you play. But they do typically happen. They just take a half day of the 2 days you actually get to play. So here's the reasons why college coaches love camps. They love to coach, teach, and train. Don't mistake that. So anything I say here tonight, I'm going to come over and over again and tell you why they love it. And they believe that they have, many, many years of experience to give you something of value when you get there. So when you go, student athletes, get that value back. Make sure you know what your why is and why you're showing up and what you expect to get out of it, and make sure that you're coming away with your expectations. So it gives you the opportunity to experience the actual college campus, see what it looks like, see if it's a regional fit, see if you're going to feel safe, how much does it cost? You don't need to write these things down, just be aware of them at the beginning. Ability to interact with the college coaches. This is why early recruiting on September 1st actually happens on September 1st. They've been evaluated. They've been to camps. These coaches have come to see them play during 2 years of evaluation before September 1st. And I'm not pushing September 1st recruiting. I really don't think that that's the right thing. I think they need to go take their visits and really spend a lot of time understanding the value of who it is that's coming and what their offer really is. So, but that really does happen for that top layer of student athletes. It really does happen in fall. I think we had over 51 just in our company, which did have a good fraction of Texas Glory student athletes. Those were done in fall, and it doesn't mean that they weren't good. We still have some that are considered top level kids, but they just didn't find the right fit. So doesn't mean you have to be first to be best. It has to be your journey. So it is an opportunity to show your talent, but I'm going to guarantee you, and we do this every year, my whole team, we go out and say, Coach, what do you want to see at a camp? What are you looking for? It's still to this day, I've not had a coach tell me personally that they, sight unseen, did not email the kid, never saw the kid play, didn't engage with their travel team, and a kid showed up and they were so blown away they recruited him. I had one mid-major tell me years ago, And she said the kid lasted 6 months because she wasn't at the layer, didn't experience a journey, didn't do all the things that happen along the way that is a little bit more sticky when you actually get to camp. And then, does your team play against the talent level that they're recruiting? Man, I mean, I didn't understand when my kid didn't get to go play Team USA. Don't get me wrong, this happens to all of us as parents. Um, the best of the best are out there. You can go. They'll have 100, 200 times 8 different camps during the year. I mean, the numbers are deep. You should keep an eye on that because you're gambling. You're 1 in 800 or you're 1 in 400. I had a coach email me back, and there was 120 at a multi-school camp on a university's campus, and she's like, how am I supposed to give feedback to 120 kids? And I'm like, well, why'd you have 120 kids at your camp then? Right? So I think as parents and as student athletes, if you're paying a camp, you should expect to get some interaction and some opportunity to speak and understand, what they're actually looking for. And then, were you sorted at the camp to be put in groups with other student athletes, and can you visually see if they put you in with the group of kids they're really recruiting, or are they sorting it by talent? We hear a lot of feedback that, oh, I didn't get in the top group and they weren't paying attention to me. Well, it's probably because they actually have seen those other ones. They actually invited them because they determined the talent level is the level that they're looking for. And maybe if you do something really big, you can bridge that gap, but that's really hard to do. It's hard to go to camp and hit so many bombs that they go, who the heck is this kid? And sight unseen, never had been part of their process before. And then here's the one, and I think this is a negative spin a lot, but it is out there. A lot of people say it's just a money grab. These colleges just want to make money. There is absolutely a money component, but do I think it's that sinister that they're out there? No. Currently, until July of this year, that's how they pay for their third assistant. That grad assistant is not a salaried employee. So my daughter's been in that situation. I think almost every coach coming up has been in that situation where that's their income. So you have to watch that as a parent too. Am I being part of that? Am I going to get something out in return for that exchange of dollars? I kind of say it like bartering. Is it of equal value when I sign up to get something like that? And yes, you want to support their program and their grad assistants if you are somebody that is going to get something out of it. And then, did it teach you something? Did it measure your abilities? And did the coach give you something that you need to work on? Because you do want to take away. And then I always say this is a positive. It's a journey. Enjoy the experience, take pictures, have fun, but keep it in a camp scrapbook. Keep it on your social media in a camp folder. But it's not something from a marketer's perspective, from a recruiter's perspective, the camp photos tagging the coach to thank them on Twitter just doesn't go over well. It doesn't help you. Sometimes it hurts you actually in the process because maybe you went to a camp lower than your talent level. And then they say, oh, wow, she's targeting that layer. Then I'm just going to move on to somebody else. There's some mismessaging that happens in marketing. So I think you need advice, and I think you need some guidance with that. I wouldn't just go signing up. My student athletes know they send me a camp flyer and say, should I really go to it, before they waste the money on it, because I'll typically save you more money than you'll ever even be able to document, because it's not where you want to go, but where you can go and where you're going to get results. So Jackie, go for it.
Yeah, there's a couple different avenues of this. I think from the student athlete point of view, especially when I was going to camps and things like that, you sort of have to have this realization with yourself, right? And go, who has reached out to me? Who wants me? Who's doing that first? Because that should demand some attention. And then look at that like gray area and it's like, are they just sending me mail, things like that. But really have that conversation of, where do you fit? Ask people who aren't your mom and dad, right? Ask your coaches, ask that, because they have more of that level playing field of understanding, hey, where do they see you? And really seek that feedback, because if you can't take their feedback, it's going to be really hard to get a coach's feedback throughout the season, especially at that level. So super important to have that conversation just with yourself as an athlete and say, we're about to spend a lot of money. Where do I want to put my focus?
That's fantastic, and so such real life information. If you all don't know, she was a double athlete, and just in multiple sports, and she's very involved in sport, so she understands what you guys are going through. So here's some more things to consider, and I may repeat them, Jackie, because like I said, I have a too long list of things today. But as a student athlete, consider: did you get invited because they came to watch you play and are interested in getting to know you? And are they interested in diving into your depth of talent? Um, did somebody else recommend you? Like, did your coach say, hey, this is a really good one? Like, we get it all the time. Hey, Sherry, I've got a camp coming up. Will you send some kids? I don't invite everybody. I send the ones that I know can play and will make an impact, because we've got two clients. Our student athletes, our client and their family, and we got the college coach. If I send kids that can't play for them, they're not going to call me anymore. If I send kids that are too good and they go through the whole process and they don't get them, they're not going to call us anymore. So we have to be very authentic in our referrals. And most of us in this business, whether we're advocates or travel ball coaches that have had these interactions with people before, we understand it. There's 51,000 travel ball coaches, and typically they're coming through the process their first time. It's their first rodeo, right? Sorry for the Texas the Texas reference, but it's usually their first rodeo. They want their kid to play there and they think their team is good, but they've never seen the kids that actually do play there in the recruiting process at this layer. So you really do need to trust the people that have results, that you can see the outcome. There's plenty of you on here with fantastic travel organizations that do it right. But sometimes it's their first time through. They might have a good brand, but it might be the first time the coach has gone through the recruiting process. So it's not as easy as it might appear. And then when you're at camp, are you coachable? Are you learning something? I had a big, huge SEC school tell me, man, this kid's numbers were not there, but man, she was coachable. And she just grew at this particular camp. And we were very impressed. We're going to be watching her. That all the coaches can say is, I like the kid, send me their schedule, and fill out a questionnaire. They can't tell me the details. So when a kid calls me and says, hey, can you give me feedback from a camp? Hey, I got 300 active kids. I can't call coaches every single time somebody goes to a camp. One, that's unrealistic. And two, that means you didn't do a good enough job. You didn't make a strong enough impression to where that coach pulled you aside and said, hey, kid, love it. Keep working on this bat. Or, hey, let's keep working on your overhand throw. Those are the types of things you need to get at a camp. They're going to tell me that they're watching you, or, hey, what's the schedule for this particular player in this team? That's when they're engaging in you. When they show up, you did a good enough job. But just posting a camp photo and tagging them, you're not doing anything other than advertising you spent money to that camp. You're not helping yourself in the recruiting process. And if you really want to send it to the coach, you should email them, because that's your only approved NCAA process. And we've got next week, we're going to go really deep with my Mike and Mike co-hosts here and Jackie on the social media aspects of recruiting. So you'll hear us talk more about that next week. But can you grow into the opportunity? If you didn't go quick enough, or you didn't go early enough, and if your talent level isn't at that layer, they're not going to need to give you time to grow into that opportunity. You should show up when your talent is recruitable. I would write that one down. Was it a true recruiting look, or was it a camp? And you're not going to know until you get the real recruiting experience. And those 24s that are committed, or our 23s that are committed, they can tell you the difference between when they went to a camp, because maybe they could play there, maybe they got an email, maybe they showed up at their games, but they don't know who they were recruiting on the team, versus the one who really, really liked them. There was a huge difference. Are they still recruiting your position and your class? This is where I say to the college coaches, come on, coaches, help us out. If you're still emailing 24s and you're done with your 24 class, don't email them. Do a good job of cleaning your database. There's nothing more upsetting to a family that gets there and finds out that you're done recruiting their class. And I've had coaches say, well, I want to keep my pulse and my finger on, in case I lose somebody. No, you're going to have plenty of relationships with plenty of us out here who can help you fill that spot for the what if. But the amount of camps that just send it out and keep inviting you, it's upsetting to me. And all my student athletes and those on the phone, especially, you all forward me your camp invite. So I know when a particular school just blasted the national database. of coaches that they buy from. It comes into my inbox. We know it. That's how come we help you do it. And so, it's real. And they're going to say, oh yeah, we're interested. We sent it to you. No, they didn't. They used a database to get it, and we all know it. Um, will you get enough reps at the camp to be considered for an opportunity? I hear this a lot. Well, I just really didn't get enough time to really show my talent. We only got 2 at bats, or we didn't get to scrimmage. Man, if you're a big player, it happens in high school too. If you're a big player expecting to go to a big school, you actually have big results everywhere you go. It's an eyesore. I sat through high school this weekend. It is an eyesore. Who are the big kids? There is a big divide. It's not that you can hit, catch, and throw, but do you do big things? Do you magical things? Are you bigger, faster, stronger than the rest of them on the field? And if you have an open heart, it's easier to judge other people than it is your own kid or yourself. I love the standard line. Oh, yes, you did great. We really like you, Susie. Send me your schedule. I'll come see you this summer. And then they never show up to see you. That's a nice way of saying, oh, somebody said in Texas language, oh, bless her heart, right? It's not necessarily what you want to hear. And yet some of them will be authentic with that. But you're going to know by the 3rd week into your summer schedule. If they didn't show up, they ain't recruiting you. Okay. Did you get enough experience in the way that it was billed on the invite? I've had people get upset, call me on the drive home. Well, there was only a combine and we never got to scrimmage. Well, read the invitation. What did it say? What did that camp flyer say? And we pulled it up, and guess what? It was a combine. And guess what? It was measurements only. And if you're going to spend money going to a camp like that and you want something different, then don't go. Take charge and say, "Ooh, Sherry, I think this is a combine. I don't really want it." And I could do a whole nother session on combines because I think it's risky too early. If you don't have good numbers that stand out, you're exposing yourself negatively. So the 1%ers stand out. If you're a 1%er, we don't need you to do combines. We already know it, right? So I think combine numbers should be used to help you grow your game, not necessarily to put it out on social media for recruiting. And then we talked about the camp photo. You really don't need it. There's a couple things that have come on the last 3 years. One, we didn't have a lot of use on Twitter before COVID. And then a lot of people are marketing people. If I were just a marketing person and not in female sports recruiting on this side, I would do the same thing some of these parents are doing. Every piece of mail that comes in the mail, they're holding up and saying cheese and putting it all over the internet. That's not recruiting. The camp flyer, that's not recruiting. You got invited, to a camp. It's not recruiting. And a lot of parents, just naively, and it's no fault. Again, I would be doing the same thing. Pushing out that content doesn't help you. It actually, kind of says you're not as knowledgeable into the process behind it as possible. And you're not helping your kid. And all these girls on here, you can give me a high five with the little buttons here, is what the mean girl thing happens, right? They see you, oh, look at me, I was at Oklahoma's camp this weekend. And they're all like, oh my God, she thinks she can play for Oklahoma. What the heck? And then the mean girl thing starts. There's no need for it. It's just not recruiting. So don't subject your kids to it. And honestly, the parents that do the social media, again, we'll take it next week, but you really need some help. So you're not hurting your kid, you're actually helping your kid. Do enough, and I said this already, do enough that they remember your name and they seek you during the contest or the camp to come over and talk to you. That's how good you have to be in order to be interacted with at a camp. Now, what was your name again? Tell me. Oh, okay, Mia, I see you. Hey, thanks for coming. And then we get a call. Hey, send me Mia's schedule for the summer. Those things happen. And then if you keep getting invited over and over again, I would think twice of how often to go. I think I would make sure you get somebody's expert advice, an advocate or somebody, to say whether or not it's worth the spend. We had several kids in the 23 class go East Coast, West Coast, multiple camps before September 1st. My advice was don't do it. Do one in each layer so you understand where you can play, and then you can signal in another way. Because when you do get in the recruiting process on September 1st, you're going to spend money on an unofficial visit and possibly a camp. and possibly other interaction. You're going to have to spend that money at some time. I would spend it when you know they like you versus trying to get seen out of 400 or 500 kids. And again, I like camps for different reasons. And then again, did you get exposure or did you get negatively exposed? I have more kids sign up and go on camps, and man, they got negatively exposed. They're not coming to see them play. They're not recruiting them. And I have a flyer in one of my presentations that says, "Parents, stop dragging your kids through the misery. Don't do it," right? Wait till there's some kind of signaling that tells you your kid can play at that level and that you're in the right lane. It's super, super strategic. Mike, Jackie, Mike, I'm going on. Any thoughts on that? I'm going to go to what's important for the athlete next. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we can touch on a couple of things that you talked about. One, I think a lot of parents out there are probably wondering, how they can identify when they're being invited. We talked a little bit about the emails, and one of the things that, I get a question from a lot of the families that I work with is, is this an actual invite? And they'll get an email that, technically is inviting them to camp. But, if you've been around for a while and you know what it looks like, you know which ones are the actual invites and the ones that are, as you mentioned, just kind of blasted out to everybody. And I actually got a question one year uh, from a player that played on my team, and the mom was convinced that she was being invited to the University of Florida. And I said, "Well, send me the email that you got." She sent it to me, and I literally sent back the email that I got that was the same email from Florida, and they were sending it to me. And, it was kind of one of those, "Dear camper, we'd love to have you come out to one of our camps." And um, so I think, my advice usually is for the athletes, send them to me or send them to your coach or, somebody that you trust that has been around the game for a while or has been through the recruiting process. Your recruiting representative, if you have one of those, 'cause if you don't know and you haven't been through it, it can be very overwhelming and confusing. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about also was, as far as the money that we're spending on these things, we talked a little bit about the multi-school camps. I think those are great because there are so many um, uh, local companies that are all over different regions across the country that run multi-school camps, and they're generally cheaper than going to the camps that are on campus. And obviously, when you can eliminate the travel, um, that helps out a lot with the expenses. And then, as you mentioned before, there's a multitude of reasons why benefits that you can get out of going to those camps. One being that, as you said, you've got a lot of these very motivated graduate assistants or assistant coaches that love working and coaching with kids. I know your daughter obviously is one of those. Mine was through last year. Um, so even if you get into a situation where the recruiting isn't happening for you, you can still get some benefit and actually learn something from the camp.
Jackie, I see you.
Absolutely. And sort of just again from like the athlete perspective, go when you're ready, and don't try and force yourself to go when you're not. I'll give you an example real quick. I was undersized for a big portion of my life, and we started recruiting sort of the same eighth grade, ninth grade. By sophomore year in my sport, you had to be committed. So I was going to these places undersized. They were telling me to gain about 20 pounds of muscle before I even saw the field. Okay. And so I knew I wasn't ready at that point. But you know what? I was like, I'm going to keep putting myself out there, keep putting myself out there. So I went to a school that I really liked, to one of their camps that they invited me to, their elite camps, whatever. I go to scrimmage with the team. They had this like camp scrimmage thing for anybody who was actually being looked at, and I bombed it. I bombed it because I knew I was undersized. I wasn't confident. I knew it, just the whole atmosphere. If you know you're not ready, that will translate to other parts of your game. Because you look around and you see people who are ready, and that may be you, but it may not be you at that exact moment. So know when you are, that'll be the correct time. Don't go out there and ruin an opportunity when you know you need to do a little bit more work, or that may not be the moment to be in front of that coach.
Definitely great advice there. And I just want to say, because we've got a really, really strong audience here tonight, if you haven't friended myself, Jackie, Mike, and Mike here, go hit us up on our Twitter pages. You've got 4 people with a lot of resource and information to give you. You want to stay connected. It's really important. If you don't know, we all know each other in this sport, and we all run in the same circles. And there's a lot of us. Most of us are in the business to help the individual student athlete and do the right thing for you. So stay connected with these people. I probably mentioned most of this already. One of my favorite hashtags, it was my business plan last year. It was hashtag be irreplaceable. When you go to camp, you have to be the one. You have to hit home runs. And slappers, come for me, because I was a slapper coach. You can private message me later. I will talk to you about what it means to do home runs and to be that actual triple threat. And Mike's actually still a clinician. I haven't been a clinician in 10 years, so we can talk to you more about those things and tips and drills. But you've got to show up. You've got to be the one that they go, whoa, did you see that girl? And they don't care if you're tall, short, in between. They want to see what you do with what you got and with your talent level. And then my new one is be relentless. You've got to be relentless at this interaction and building to be bigger, better, and stronger. I give feedback to my student athletes, when the coaches do call me. And man, it's always going to be bigger, better, faster, and stronger unless they like you and they say, man, we're coming for this kid. But they don't typically do that till September. So go because somebody like an advocate or a head coach said that this is a great experience where you can play, or that you're close enough to get a good look. If you're in 9th grade and you're going to camps, I never advise to go to camps just to get warmed up for the season or just to have a good experience. It's not a good thing. Every coach knows everybody, and they're going to be sitting at a recruiting event and they're going to go, man, that kid came to my camp and boy, she just didn't even give effort, and she didn't show up. I mean, why would you spend the money? I don't get that one at all, and I hear that often. Are your talents ready for exposure? Did you interact while you were there? That's the point of it. And if there's, like that one coach said, 120 of you, then man, you got to know the best coaches put on a camp with a limited amount when they're on campus, and they're the ones that are very serious about it. There was a Big 12 coach that actually had a grad assistant up on a baseball camp thing, and she said, you better believe it. They go in at the break and they come back out and they sort kids that they want to see pit against each other and fight it out, and really, start to evaluate whether or not they're going to spend their time to come see you play. So if you're coming sight unseen and you weren't invited, that's the only chance. You have to be that good. And then this is my favorite one, especially for the parents. When they ask, oh, do you guys got any questions? If you got questions about the university of a camp you just went to, you didn't do your homework before you got there, man, you got to get it done long before you get there. You should not have a question unless it's a personal question, about some specific drill or something that happened. But it should not be the generic stuff that's up on their website when you could have gotten so much information. I call it Mr. Google. Go see Mr. Google and get everything you need off Mr. Google, because then you'll get that one parent that raises their hand 10 times and you're just like, please, sir, put your hand down. You're embarrassing us. And I've seen and heard a lot of coaches, they're pretty funny. They try to out the crazy dad, the crazy mom, right? So they're looking at you as much as they're looking at the student athletes. So I can't tell the parents anymore how much the higher the talent layer, the harder they go looking at the parent. Assess your talent. Like Jackie said, you got to know. You got to know if you're going to a top shelf program that you're a top shelf without a shadow of a doubt student athlete. You can't leave before the coaches chat with you. That's the point. You don't even need a photo. Go chat with them. Get some specifics, reiterate your name. Our group is being taught to email them in addition, sending the link to their page, sending them, something specific. We give an entire list of camp prep. We call it tryouts because it's not camp, it's a tryout when you're in the recruiting process. So when is it a real camp? When they've seen you play. When you got an invite through your team, through your advocate, and because they came to see you play. It's rarely ever, 99.9%, not a real invite when they DM you. That's a new one. Like some of the coaches think, it is authorized from an NCAA. They're only allowed to invite you to camp and fill out a questionnaire. So there are people DMing you. In my world, I say, hey, coaches, help me help the student athlete. Tell me it's real. If you're just fishing for camps, I had one SEC do it to me this summer. And honestly, one of my student athletes had a choice. Do I go to this school or that school? The coach wouldn't call back to tell me whether or not it was a legit camp and it was a legit invite. I told the kid to go to the other school. That's how it rolls, right? Because these top level kids, they can go to any camp in the country and make somewhat of an appearance. And then there's layers amongst layers at that layer. So, how many of people just like you are they recruiting? You got to know that, because I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to come for, depending on the school and the level, they're going to come for 40 kids on September 1st, just because they call you and engage and start talking and bring you to another camp or get you on a Zoom call doesn't mean that you're getting recruited and getting an offer. Man, the balls go in the air. I visualize it like the bingo machine, all the balls bouncing around, jumping around, and you got to figure out how to pull them down. It is more gut-wrenching and emotional if you've never been through it, which I'm assuming you haven't because you're on this call. I see some travel ball coaches here, man. We shake our heads when it comes down to it. It is really, really an interesting thing to go through, very emotional. I use a decision grid and I show it in my presentation for the camps. And one of my girls just committed to a school, and I'm not going to put her out there, but her camp invites and lists and who she was emailing was not anywhere close to who she ended up with. And it was actually a better destination and a better fit, but it didn't come till 90 days after September 1st. And it was not even on her target list. That's how far off the track it gets at some point in your targeting. So if you're just targeting 3 to 5 people, you've got to really expand and get more depth in it. So I think I talked a little bit already about getting where's your money the best spend. And it really is in building your talent level, like Jackie said, and making sure your talent is camp ready. And, spend it on skills and drills. I love me some clinicians. They are unbelievable. These are the engines behind all that you guys are doing. That's where your money is spent. When your talent and money is ready, then you do it in a game, and then the real recruiting camps come about. I do think it's going to be interesting, and I'll pose this question out to my panel here. What do you think is going to happen with the third coach? Because NCAA said in July, the third coach now will be paid. Do you think they'll go after as many of these big money spend camps versus tightening it up and have more targeted camps? What do you guys think?
I think because of the NCAA regulations where they have to have it open, still I think they'll have that one big open one, and I think they'll tighten up their elite ones so that there may be not as many. But it's hard because it's still solid money for the program on that end as well financially. So I just think that they might. The landscape of them will change, and on maybe there's not as many elite or something different.
Mike Zimmer, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the same. I think maybe your bigger schools might drop it or tighten up their camps. I think your smaller schools still need that money, even though we look at them as being so large. I think that's a hard payday to turn down. So maybe tighten it up at the upper schools, but and I'm talking top elite Power Fives. The rest, I think probably still have it to try to maybe change where that money goes.
Good thoughts, Mike Miller.
Yeah, I think I don't honestly see a lot of changes with that, just because as Jackie mentioned, it's such a big contributor to the program financially. The only thing that maybe could change things, I think, in the other direction would be, there has been some talk about the period changes, and the non-recruiting in the fall and all those things that we've heard over the past several months, I think that could actually make for more camps if something like that were to happen.
Interesting, and we could probably cover that at another time too. I want to tell you, I knew I had an action-packed list here tonight. I want to open it up. If any of you guys have questions, I don't see any D1 coaches here to where we can't bring student athletes up on. If you have questions, and I think there was one in the box here, and let me look at it really quick. That was a message here. Jackie, I don't know if you can see it and read it real quick. I had it up and then I can't find it.
It was, how can someone find out what the college they're interested in needs for each grad year?
So that's interesting. And I didn't pay you to say this, but I actually try to host a pin on my CSA underscore athletes Twitter page that lists as many commits as I can find out there. And, I'm out on social media every day. I always offer, if you email or even DM me, anybody you see commit that's not on my list, I'll gladly add it. Some of our big publications used to list it, but if you're before the recruiting timeline, like I think it says you're 25, if you're before that, you got to consider it. They're going after pitcher, catcher, shortstop, big hitters is a real classic line. And if you're an outfielder, you got to have a big bat and do great things, and they got to have three of you. So I've never heard anybody say that they're not looking for, anybody. Now, you might get feedback after the season begins as I'm not going to pick up a catcher in that class because I've got too many. I had one coach in the same conference as Kennesaw. I can't remember the conference name, but it's same. One of the competitors in Kennesaw, and she said to me, "Look, I'm going to have 8 pitchers in that class. I'm going to pass on this pitcher." And so sometimes that happens, but pitcher catcher, they almost all of them have 6 or 7, if not more. So you've got depth there, but I've never heard them. It's always going to be talent level and whether or not you can play there and be a contributor. And I had this interesting conversation with a parent today. Oh well, if I go, then I can, my kid can go. They get on the roster, and then they can just spend their freshman year working. I've never seen that happen. Now, maybe, if we get into the needles in the haystack, but usually if you're going to a big program and you're being heavily recruited, they want you to be a contributor somewhere on the field as soon as possible. They don't send you on the bench in a farm team or a redshirt kind of experience or a walk-on type of experience and hope to groom you up. They're going to be recruiting somebody else behind you to play. They are not recruiting, bench players. They're recruiting members of the team that can contribute wherever is needed. So the walk-on thing is still mystifying to me. And I know some people have it, but I haven't seen it be a positive experience for a student athlete. It might be a component that they needed on the team, but man, it's tough, because you can only travel 21 kids on a big roster. You don't get to be part of it. You're not really on the team. So that's a tough place. I wouldn't sacrifice the value to be a student athlete at any level when there's only 8,000 in each age group to be on a bench on a big name in hopes of bridging the gap. I haven't seen it happen. They usually go in the portal. Mike or Jackie or Mike, any thoughts there?
I think this is the trickiest. When I read this question earlier, I was like, this is really, really hard. Unfortunately, a lot of people find out later than sooner about what, which are closed. And that's the unfortunate part of recruiting. Honestly, I do a lot of searching. I see who has committed there, things like that. Nowadays, a lot. There's so much on social media. Reach out to, somebody like Sherry or things like that and use your networking. But you'll know, you can ask, right? Like there's always that thing, are you still recruiting 24 or whatever? And have that confidence in certain aspects. If you feel like you're being strung along, it's like, oh, how's it going? Are you guys still open in my position, XYZ? Don't be rude about it. But if they're closed and they're telling other people they're closed and just talking to you on the side, I mean, you don't want that either, right? You want to know, where you lie with certain coaches. Now, sometimes you might not be able to talk to them, right? Unless you're somewhere where that's a possibility. But so it can be tricky. But really networking and using people, whether that be your coaches or your clubs, to sort of navigate that, may be helpful for you.
Fantastic. Mike, any comments there? Awesome. Again, I want to remind you guys, friend us all, connect with us up here. That is pinned to the reader. And then one of my own student athletes, thank you very much, Alexis, is asking, do we guide you? Yes, 100%. We guide each of our student athletes where they should go to camp, and we don't try to dictate their talent level. We really do the big wide spread. We like the multi-school camps at the multiple, at the tournaments that have that. The level she plays at's a very elite level. So, she's going to big tournaments and big things. Where I think sometimes the spin gets tricky is, I call them gimmicky things like, oh, a little all-star tournament, like Colorado. I love Triple Crown. Don't come for me, Triple Crown. But their academic camp is literally the best high academic camp in the country. And if you think you're high academic, you have to have an equivalent to a 25 ACT and be a sophomore to even get in the camp. And it closes up every year. It has more coaches at it than you'll ever believe. I'm a huge fan of that one. But some of the rest of them, they'll come in Sunday and Monday and do camp. And the only time I've ever advised somebody is that this one particular student athlete had her eyes on somebody that was never going to see her in her part of the country, and her team was traveling there. Give it a shot. It doesn't work. You're matched with another coach. You got 100 kids. You got, I think it was 40 kids and 2 coaches. That's a lot. That's not camping. That's just woo. So I haven't seen those individual ones at the big showcases be worthwhile. You're better off having your team host their own combine while they're there. There's other ways around it. So, and I never mean to cut the coaches off from earning what they should earn. If people want to go, that's great. But when I'm advising student athletes that are paying our company to get them through the recruiting process, I'm going to give you a more individual approach of your talent level and where you can play, and help your parents not spend the money out going where you want to go, because it just doesn't turn out that way. I mean, it has for a few, but it's just not the way it is. And then I get the phone call on September 2nd. I don't understand why I didn't get recruited. And a lot of blaming goes on. Oh, my coach didn't do this and my team didn't do that. No, man, parents, if you don't know, it's your responsibility. You should start in 7th and 8th grade. You should get engaged in the process, and it is a full-time job, and you got to be willing to allow the college coaches to tell you where your kid can play. So props up to the coaches. They make the decision. We don't make the decision. The student athlete gets to choose at the end if they have multiple choices, but the college coaches are going to tell you where you're valuable. They're the ones that are going to be offering you hundreds of thousands of dollars to come play a sport at their university and to have that elite experience. So I think you really have to trust their input. Any other comments or questions from the audience? You can push over on the bottom left to request to speak if you want to ask a question, or you can put it up on our chat. I see our little chat now, Jackie. She's the master of this. Jackie's awesome. So hopefully we answered all your questions. If not, you can see my name up there. I am Sherry Naudine. I'm the owner of CSA. That is my Twitter space. I've got a couple advocates here on the line with us. Mike, you guys are super valuable. Next week, we are coming into social media. It's going to be even better. I hope you guys like this one. It's going to be even better. Some people disagree. 9 years of experience for what did I say this morning? My advocates that are on the phone were 473 committed student athletes. We've been through it all. We listen to the coaches. We respect their opinions. We try to help them help you understand where you can play. And thank you to some travel ball coaches on here. Appreciate your support. Love you guys. Can't do it without you. And again, we thank you guys for coming. Jackie, any final thoughts?
Just overall, when you're talking about camps and things like that, this is sort of what I said last session, is the fact that when you go there, you go with an expectation, and sometimes that expectation is met or is not met. So the best way to go in that is just stay focused, really hone in on what you're good at. Pay attention only to the sport. Don't worry about what the coaches are doing, where they're at. Are they looking at you? Just go there, have fun, enjoy, let loose. Don't put too much pressure on yourself.
Fantastic. Mike Zimmer, any final thoughts?
No, that's kind of similar thing I was gonna say. I try to tell the girls as much as I can. Showcase your what you're known for. Your speed. If your speed, steal bases, right? If you're a power hitter, obviously we want everybody hit home runs. If you're be vocal, show off what you are, right? That's what they want to see. So definitely go in there. Everybody's nervous, but you got to be confident, right? And I know that's hard. Just go show them what you got and let the rest play out.
Excellent. How about Mike Miller? Close it out, Mike.
Yeah, I think just a couple of important things. One, listen to people that have been through this before, or that have been in the industry for a long time, and pay attention to what's going on around you with the classes that are ahead of you. If you're a 25 or a 26 right now, go look at the players in your region, and um, don't hesitate to reach out to those ones that are committed, and ask them about the kind of things that they were doing. And then real quick again, the camp website that I host is softballcamplist.com. And I don't put any camps on there that I wouldn't have sent my own kid to. So they're all pretty good ones. And thank you, Sherry, again for having me on.
You're welcome. Amazing resource. Thank you guys all for your valuable input. Thank you, our audience, for joining in and giving us this opportunity to share with everybody. And we'll see you next Monday, 8 o'clock. Social media, get ready. Have a great night, everybody.